Hello and welcome to Odds on Premier League Match Day 13. There are some people already working in the Thanksgiving dinner, and for that matter, we are also going to work to give you some good tips for the weekend. Tom, we have Chelsea-Arsenal 6 points gap between these two teams. So I hope the Blues win and we have a title race, because it looks like no one else can chase Arsenal this season.
It looks that way at the moment, but I'll keep saying this to people until I'm blue in the face. We have still got a long way to go. And not too long ago, Arsenal were like 5 points clear with 2 games to go and still managed not to be champions. So we will see in the long run.
Indeed, the morale is really high after beating also Bayern Munich, but the road is really long indeed. Also for Arne Slot, keep Arne Slot alive, many people are saying. So let's analyze everything. A lot to talk about every team in the Premier League. Fights in Everton, Man United, useless, unable to win a team with 10 men. So a lot to talk about. Guys, let me know in the comments, of course, your tips. And don't forget to back us if you like our videos. And now let's go on with the show. Well, Brentford, Burnley is the first game, important, I guess, for the relegation, since Burnley are penultimate right now in the standings with only 10 points, lost the last 3 games, Chelsea, West Ham, and Arsenal, so all teams from London, and now they go to Brentford, a team that play way better at home than away, tell Newcastle, than Liverpool recently. Therefore, Tom, these odds for Brentford to win, only 1.5.
Yeah, the home form's irresistible here. So you have to look for a Brentford victory. And Burnley, the worm has turned for them. I think their victories over West Ham and Leeds could, if they stay up, prove absolutely pivotal. I think it's 3 teams for 2 relegation spots plus Wolves. And Burnley want to get out of that group. And those 3 are trying to drag other teams in, of course. But look, I think with Brentford, it's fascinating to me how little their very basic tactics have been caught by other teams. Obviously, you've got the work rate, fine, right? They can outwork you. Any team can outwork any other team if they have a certain dedication. But they do 2 things. Number one, they knock it back to Henderson. They protect him like he's a quarterback. He knocks it over the top to Thiago or Ouattara, one of the other runners, and they find a way to score. It's what led to the penalty award last week against Brighton, and has been a consistent tactic across the first few weeks of the season. And the other thing is the 𝐬𝐭𝐴 long throw into the box, which no one seems to be able to deal with. And that's not a criticism. I don't know how you deal with it. It's an incredible throw, an incredible weapon. And if you miss the first header, you're in serious trouble if you miss it. Beyond that, there isn't a great deal happening at Brentford. It's a very basic, very physical team. But it's a very basic and physical team at a time when the Premier League has never been as physical, certainly in the last 15, 20 seasons. So they are perfectly suited to survive in the Premier League this campaign, despite the limitations that they have. And as you mentioned, the home form is very good, was great under Frank. It's good under Andrews, and I expect it to continue here. I think it'll be quite similar to the Newcastle and Liverpool games in that don't discount 3 goals here for Brentford. I think they win this quite convincingly. In terms of Burnley, nice team. Nice little team, 3 points. And that's the issue with a lot of teams that come up from the Championship. You know, it's what Scott Parker has done previously when he's brought teams up from the Championship. They are not solid defensively in the way they were when they were in the Championship. It's a huge step up, obviously. And then in terms of midfield, yeah, Florentino, nice little passer. 𝐿𝐭𝐴 and Cullen, good little players, and Cullen even. But in the end, do they have the dynamism to win lots of Premier League games? No. Do they have the defense to keep clean sheets on the regular as they were previously? No. 𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐵 and 𝗛𝗏, fine. 𝗛𝗏𝗏 is formerly a good Premier League goalkeeper. And offensively, Fleming played well against Wolves a few weeks ago. 3 further games since then. Beyond 1 free header at West Ham has done nothing. And so, look, it's a Championship squad. I expect them to be back in the Championship next season unless they can win surprise points like this. That's not what I'll bet on here. Take the Brentford win, obviously, at 1.5. And I think they'll score a few goals here, Brentford. I think they will overpower Burnley. And look at the defence recently for Burnley. 2 conceded, 3 conceded, 2 conceded. Go for at least 2 goals here. Minus 1.5 and a Brentford win is 2.38. But I might even get more creative than that and go for at least 3-0 to Brentford here. I think they wallop them.
Is Florentino a better midfielder or president, Tom?
People keep trying to convince me that he's an amazing midfielder. So let's go with that. Let's go with that. The football journos like him. Maybe he'll end up at lower level Premier League promoted team next year as well.
Multitask person. Well, Brentford to score 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. I like Brentford and goals at home. 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 scoring once again. So let's back Brentford playing at home. Then Man City, Leeds. We saw a strange decision from Guardiola in the Champions League, changing the whole team and getting a defeat that put them in trouble to get into the top 8, especially after losing also to Newcastle, conceding so many chances. They didn't control the game. Even Haaland missed some chances, which is an oddity. But now they have 2 kind of easy games, Leeds and Fulham. Let's see if we don't see Man City falling off from a cliff as we saw last season with these 2 defeats. Tom, you could think we might see this, because the problem, I guess, is these players that we had a lot of hopes on them. Marmoush, Reinders, they are not delivering. Even 𝐿𝐴, for instance, they are not playing well. Short squad, lack of confidence.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that you've highlighted something there. They bought a lot of the same player over and over and over again because they're trying to fill the void of Kevin De Bruyne. It's like someone who breaks up with their dream husband and takes many lovers in order to try and compensate for that. And they just can't find someone to satisfy them in the same way that they did with Kevin De Bruyne. That was tortured, that metaphor. I'm moving on from it. But I think more broadly, like, the midfield makeup isn't right. And I thought that at Newcastle at the weekend, and he shuffles the pack against 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐼 in the Champions League, and suddenly Rico Lewis is back in central midfield. He's not a central midfielder. Stop trying to make that work. Nico in central midfield, Nico Gonzalez, he's a good player. He's a perfectly good player. And I don't know, maybe it's a similar sort of situation with Kevin De Bruyne. They're trying to replace Rodri with someone who's not Rodri, but he is not that player. And against Newcastle at the weekend, you saw Newcastle overpower the Man City midfield. And when Rodri's there, it doesn't happen. When he isn't there, it does, and it happens regularly. And if the midfield is the same as last week, Foden, Gonzalez, and Silva, you've got problems there. I think they need someone like 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐼 to come back into the squad and give them a bit of physicality. Obviously, they need Rodri back, but who knows when that's going to happen. And so the midfield balance isn't there. I think Guardiola, like everyone, has been caught out by just how physical the Premier League is this season. And I think you can out-battle City, which you couldn't do for former years because City had 90% of the ball and you didn't have the chance to battle them because you couldn't touch the ball. So there's problems there. And then you mentioned it earlier on, they have so many players that are so inconsistent. Jeremy Doku puts in an incredible performance against Liverpool and we think, wow, he's there. We've finally got the Jeremy Doku we've been looking for 18 months. And then, where is he? What did he do against Newcastle? He was totally anonymous in that game. And I think it was Livramento's first start in months or something or other, and he couldn't do anything against him. So that's that on one side. Ryan 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐼, another 1 in 3 player on the other. There's all sorts of consistency problems with City. The only players that have been consistent this season, Erling Haaland, besides the last couple of games where he hasn't scored, and Donnarumma, who's been fantastic, absolutely fantastic. He's an astonishingly good goalkeeper. And I can't believe he's not 45, but there you go. On the other side of things, I still think, I've said it all along and I'll stick by it all the way through, I think it'll be Burnley, Leeds and Wolves. Of that 3, I think of the teams that can get above West Ham, I think it would be Leeds. But they've got one clear problem, which is the lack of goal scorers. 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐼 and Okafor and all the guys they've played up front, 𝐶alvert-Lewin, they're fine. None of them will get more than 8 goals in the Premier League this season. I wouldn't bet on them getting 5 apiece in the Premier League this season. If they all get their 5, then there's a chance. But I'm not sure that they will. The midfield is very solid and functional, which gives them a great chance in this game. They can outwork Man City, but there's not a great deal of quality there in Longstaff, Ampadu and Biel and Gruev and Stark, who I think is injured for this one. They've got a lot of really hard-working players. Brendan Aronson. But who's going to play the through ball? Who's going to score the goal? Who's going to protect the ball in a vital moment in a game? I'm not sure they've got that player. I'm not surprised to see him lose to Villa last week, where all 4 of my tips came in, by the way, in the game between Leeds and Villa. Wasn't shocked to see him lose to Forest. Wasn't shocked to see him lose to Brighton. Won't be shocked to see them lose here. Man City will win. I think it's the safest bet of the weekend at 1.22. I do think there's a chance there'll be plenty of goals in this game. And don't discount a Leeds sucker punch, similar to Nottingham Forest a few weeks ago. City 2-1, 3-1, or 4-1 is a really generous 4. City in over 3.5 goals is 2.63. I see goals in this game. And City, if they come out aggressive and angry from the last 2, they can put anyone to the sword. And then, even though he's not scored in 2, stick with Haaland. Anytime 1.44. First goal is 2.88. City, decent win here.
Okay, Haaland to score. Someone is saying this is always kind of a safe bet. If you think Man City are winning, City over 1.5 goals in the first half, or City is on handicap -2. City destroys Leeds. So everyone expecting here Man City to bounce back and smash Leeds. Next one is a tricky one. Sunderland, Bournemouth. We have Bournemouth as the favorites according to the bookies, despite having won only 1 game away this season, drew with West Ham in the previous game, and Sunderland lost to Fulham in the very last minute. Tom, this could be easily another draw, or what do you think? It's a tricky one.
I think it's going to be really close. I do think it's going to be really close. And yeah, possibly that. But look, let's look at the 2 teams. I think Sunderland, I keep on saying it. I think their start has been spectacular. This will not be a finish in the European places. This will not be a top half finish. They will finish somewhere between 11th and 15th this season, which will be incredibly good for a team that just got promoted. But I think the newly promoted sting of Sunderland has come to its end. And I think you're going to see some real hard yards from here. They're about to lose 6, 7, 8 players to AFCON in maybe 3 weeks' time. The second team is nowhere near as strong as the first team. So it's a huge game, this for Sunderland. Get the win. 22 points means they need like 11 or 12 on average to stay in the league from this point. I think that's still the target for Sunderland. And any talk of anything more than that needs to be put on hold until they get to the 40-point mark, which I don't think they'll get to this season. But they do still look very solid. I think their back 3 is brilliantly physical, and they'll fight for every ball. And they're in an era where there's not a great deal of delicacy about forwards. And so having that sort of back line is really helping. I think it continues to be a case of protect Xhaka at all costs, and his leadership has seen them over the line. And I think it's notable that Isidore up front, who looks like a good Premier League goal scorer, is just looking slightly more like what we expected. I think you're looking at someone who is going to get maybe 10 goals in the league this season. 4 already is pretty decent, but I think there was reports of him being, one of the best strikers in the league. Like, I wouldn't go that far. So I do think, look, solid, well-organized. They will stay up, but I think they will start to lose games. If they win this, I think they can send the boys off to AFCON with a pat on the back and big thanks. If they lose this, I think they could potentially slide back into the soup, because I do think Fulham are winning. I think West Ham will win some more games. And then that leads you looking at Leeds. Like everyone's looking. Are Leeds going to be able to do something here? In terms of Bournemouth, bizarre game last week in that West Ham were out of sight, home and hosed at half-time. And then Nuno hit the metaphorical suicide button on West Ham. And Bournemouth were like, wait, they're just going to let us attack? Okay. And then you add that to the rain and the conditions and all that, and the way they moved the ball so quickly. Like, compare that to Man United against Everton. Couldn't get the ball rolling. Compare it to Man City at Newcastle. Couldn't get the ball rolling. Bournemouth, zip, bang, pop, kept on moving it. And in the end, they probably should have won the game from 2-0 down. And if it wasn't for an amazing performance of Alphonse Areola, they probably would have done. And that's down to people like Scott and Adams and Krupi and Brooks, Tavernier, Truffert. They're just a really good offensive team. And even without Kluivert, likely missing for this, Semenyo, likely missing for this, Ben Doak, likely missing for this, they've got a whole bunch of players, Enes Unal, for example, who came off the bench last week, who can continue to keep that intensity up all the way through. So tricky game, this. And I am so on the fence, I'm going to basically say everything. So draw at 3.44. Sure, absolutely. I think that's a possibility. For me, I would just shade for Bournemouth because I'm so neg on Sunderland. I think at some point it's going to come through. So Bournemouth win is a really attractive 2.46. 2-1 Bournemouth. 2-1 either way, this screams to me. But 2-1 Bournemouth are generous 9. I don't always say correct scores, but a few have been coming in recently. 2-1, the most common scoreline in football. So I think it could be a possibility there. And I can see a bit like last week, these are two teams that push for late goals. These are two teams that will not accept a 1-1 draw. If this is 1-1 going into the final 10, they're both going to go all out to score the winner. Both score, no draw, 2.63. Screams 2-1 either way.
Sunderland, draw no bet. 𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐿 is going for the draw, something that I would back. Sam's channel, Sunderland to win. Both teams to score. Bournemouth all the way. You can see how difficult is this game to predict, that everyone is saying a different thing. Let's see what happens here. Next one, also a tricky one. If we check the odds, Everton, Newcastle, although Newcastle, they are so bad away from home that it suggests to back Everton. Here is only 3 points away from home for Newcastle, no wins away. They also lost away in the Champions League. And what to say about Everton, what to say about 𝐿𝐵𝐿's red card? It was hilarious, I have to say. And what to say about Pickford's performance? Wow, he had like 2-3 saves, top, yeah. High level. Great win for Everton, despite everything that happened in Old Trafford.
Yeah, Jordan Pickford is such an unbelievably underrated goalkeeper. Like, he is so underrated. He has made so many incredible stops in this league for a decade. He's been England's #1 for a decade, to European Championship finals and World Cup semi-finals and quarterfinals. Like, he is a top goalkeeper. And look, he's at a great club, so I don't want to disparage Everton, but he is a Champions League goalkeeper. To think some of the rubbish keepers that have played Champions League football and not Jordan Pickford does annoy me a bit, because I think he's fantastic. But nobody has made the move on Pickford over the years. He's very happy where he is, and that's great. But shame for him, I think, that he's not been able to do that in his career, because he is fantastic. And that performance on Monday was so Moyesian. It was almost textbook. Like, they didn't create much, but when they did, it was a great goal from 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝐻𝗋. And despite the idiocy of 𝗀𝗻𝗂 𝐻𝐿𝐴, the solidity of Everton was fantastic. I have seen this performance so many times with David Moyes' teams. And if you are not on it and you can't move the ball quickly and they are 1-0 up, they're going to beat you. You got to do something to beat a David Moyes team in that scenario. And United did nothing. And Everton were very, very solid. Michael Keane was fantastic in the game, as were several other players for Everton. Even Barry up front. Look, he lacks quality, but that man will work and work and work. And, you know, David Moyes has turned many a rough diamond into a really good striker. Antonio, 𝐼𝐿𝐴. I mean, it's a huge list in his career. And those are just the two of the most recent ones. I think he probably could do it with Barry, and you saw that on Monday. So, lots to like about that Everton win. Really important one as well. I don't think they'll be in the relegation race this season. I think I've said a few times now, I think it'll be 3 from 4 at a push, 3 from 5, but that 5th won't be Everton. And I think they'll have every chance of winning this. And in terms of Newcastle, the problem is 2 games a week. And when you have seen teams thrive in the European Premier League kind of back-to-backs, it's because they play a low-intensity game. You have to play a low-intensity game to survive that. That ain't what Newcastle do. You saw it against Marseille in midweek. You saw it last weekend in the Premier League against Manchester City. They cannot play low intensity. It has to be low. It has to be high, and they don't have the rotation. There is no replacement in this squad for Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, and Joe Linton. And as much as I like Joe Willock, I'd love to sign Joe Willock. He's a good player. The drop-off is big. Lewis Miley, like him. Drop-off is big. Because the 3 they have are the 3 best in the Premier League, for my money, as a group. And so they need the rotation. Without it, they're going to continue to struggle away from home. And I think it's notable, too, that Nick 𝗏𝗏𝗏's goal scoring's fallen off a cliff after his initial thrust in the Premier League. Barnes was great, on a good run of form against City last week and against Marseille in midweek. But beyond that, Gordon not fit and then struggling. Jacob Murphy, I think, is fantastic, but he's not providing the assists that I'd expect for someone of his quality. There are issues there, and you can't discount the away form and the fact they can't play 2 games in a week. When you look at the bet for this one, 2.91 for an Everton win, stupid. Take it. Nearly double your money. That'll get to double your money by the time we get to the weekend, so definitely go for that. If Everton are to win, they'll do it in Moyesian style. There won't be many goals. 1-0 win is 9. Everton win to 0 is 5. And this I thought was really, really generous. Everton win and under 3.5 goals was 3.5. Everton's wins this season, 1-0 Man United, 2-0 against Fulham. When they win by keeping a clean sheet and keeping the game incredibly dull. And so I thought that's very generous. So I'm taking that.
Well, you won't believe it, but we have Tottenham, Man United, Everton, and Liverpool all with the same points at the end of November. So this is not saying great things about the other teams, I would say. For instance, Tottenham playing at home against Fulham, their home form has been really, really poor. For Tottenham, actually penultimate in the standings, if we only take in consideration the home form. Only one win this season. They played better in Paris, but they lost again. Richarlison scoring good goals, but for nothing, basically. Perhaps he wins the 𝗵𝗀𝗀 award for the goal at the Emirates, but still it's only one win in the last 5 for Tottenham, and Fulham got a key win against Sunderland in the very last minute. Away, 5 consecutive defeats for Fulham.
Yeah, I think it's the second worst home team in the league this season against the second worst away team in the league this season. So, I mean, look, this is tough. It's a tough one, this, because I think there's great potential in Tottenham. I do think Thomas Frank's a good manager, but I think he needs a home win now. And he needs a home win where the home crowd can be satiated and given confidence by what he offers. And I don't think that has been forthcoming. Some really good away wins, some really good away performances. But at home, the guys that go every week, 19 times a year or more, they have not been entertained now for 2 years. They need something. So I'm fascinated to see what he does here. There's been some changes of shape that Thomas Frank has utilised in I think the last game. He played 3 at the back with Van der Ven, Gray and Danso. Romero is suspended, so maybe this is the time to continue that experiment, considering they have looked a bit flat in the shape they've been using, the 4-2 kind of 3-1. The midfield hasn't got a great deal of dynamism, so if you go 3 at the back with wing backs, that gives you the width you don't have in that kind of narrow 2-man midfield. And that leaves kind of Palhinha and one other, Sarr or Bentancur, to do what they like to do, which is break the play up and play it sideways, because there are other people that do the creativity. And the front group, the issue is that Richarlison, I think, is a fine striker, 6 out of 10, but he's not a top quality striker. Solanke is out injured. There's no rotation there. And then a bit like sort of Man City, they've got a bunch of the same player, Kudus and Simmons and 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗀. I know he's injured now, but 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿. Like, they're fine. They're fine. But what's the best combination, and where's their best position? And I don't know what that is. And they needed someone a bit more Maddison. I know it's such a cliche at this point, but they needed someone with a bit more guile than the guys they've got, who are take on 2 people and try and get a cross in. And I thought maybe they think 𝗀𝗻𝐿 Simons was that guy, but he certainly hasn't been so far. So fascinating with Tottenham, and the home form has been pretty poor, as we mentioned. In terms of Fulham, a really important win against Sunderland, nicked at the last. And there was some great video of Marco Silva talking to his team in the dressing room post-match. They knew what a big result that was, because they are a team that could get sucked in, Fulham. They really, really could. So it was important to get that win over Sunderland. There's not a great deal of rotation in this squad. That's been an issue. No one has played particularly well consistently this season. That has been an issue. They've moved 𝗻𝗁𝗐 deeper to try and give some creativity, because the 𝗵𝗀𝗀 pairing has not quite worked. Wilson's a really good player, 1 in 3. Josh King's a teenager. You can't rely on him. So, you've got all these issues there. Lack of consistency, lack of creativity. And now there's no rotation for Jimenez and Rodrigo Muniz as well. And they basically play like 60-30, 60-30 each week. So loads of problems to solve. They don't look particularly solid away from home. And this is tricky. This is tricky. You know what I'm going to say? Screams draw. Absolutely screams draw. Thinking about the Wolverhampton Wanderers match a few weeks ago. I think it'll be tough to watch. I think it'll be very low scoring. I'd certainly look at under 2.5 goals in this game. Draw at 3.6 would be my top tip. If you're going to go for a win, just shade for the home team, and it will be by exactly 1 goal. Tottenham by exactly 1 is 4, 1-0, 2-1 at best, but certainly not a thriller. Just about shade for the home team if you pick one, but draw for me.
Spurs win, 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿 to score. Combo, 1x and over 1.5 goals. Spurs have 1 game at home. Fulham. Bordeaux. Okay.
Yes.
Well, and you mentioned it's the second worst home team against the second worst away team, because Wolves are the worst in both home and away. So if we remove Wolves from the equation, indeed. What were the odds on Tom having the Christmas tree up before Thanksgiving? The thing is that in Europe, we don't care that much about
Number one,
Thanksgiving.
I'm not American. I don't care about Thanksgiving. It means nothing to me. I'm not even sure what it is. And two, my 5-year-old daughter made me do this, and she very much runs this house. So what do you want from me?
Exactly. Well, I saw London with all the Christmas lights. Beautiful time to visit London, by the way. And talking about London, not the most beautiful neighborhood, I have to say. We go to Selhurst Park. Do you agree, Tom?
Side swipe. I'm not agreeing with anything. I'm not saying that was him, not me.
I've been there actually around the stadium once for a job interview, and quite dodgy, I have to say. Crystal Palace, Man United, but I've never been to Selhurst Park, to the stadium. But this is a great game, actually, and I love the odds also against Man United, as almost always 2.5 if you are back in Palace in European spots, doing a brilliant season, 2 points more than the Red Devils. And Man United perhaps back, Tom, to square zero, back to the beginning after that defeat against Everton, the draws against Tottenham and Forest, all the good things. We didn't say many good things, I have to say, about Man United when they were winning, but I think it's pretty clear that they are not going to impress us this season.
Yeah, they'll be mid-table, upper mid-table, and if they go on a run towards the end of the season, United might be able to compete for Conference League. Beyond that, I think that's as far as they're going to take it. Look, Palace are very good, right? They continue to be consistent after a couple of wobbles at the start of the season. Some of the recent performances have been fantastic. It was a total dominant victory against Wolves last week. I know Wolves, as established, are very poor, but you still got to beat them, and Palace beat them in such fantastic style. Same against Brentford recently. The victory at Liverpool in the Cup was obviously impressive. And like, it's almost tiresome in that I'm going to say the same thing every week. You know exactly how they're going to play. You know exactly how they set up. Try and stop them. And you just can't. You just can't, because the organization is so good. The performances are so consistent. 𝐷aniel I mean, he's got to be in contention. If we look at the last calendar year, he's been maybe one of the most consistent players in the Premier League. Like, he's just so good at that right wing back role. Mitchell on the other side has gone from sort of middling, no mark sort of Premier League player to someone that I would love to see on the left side of my sort of midfield. I think his improvement has been incredible. Gay should be back for this, replacing 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐻, leaving Richards, 𝗏𝗏, and Gay with Henderson. Brilliant. Beat that three if you can. And they even lose 𝗵𝗵𝗄. And they sign 𝗀𝗻𝐴 Pinot. Look, he ain't been consistently good, but if he doesn't do it, they can move Kamada there. I think he will continue to get better. And Ismaila Sarr and 𝗀𝗿𝗏 Mateta have picked up the slack. So, incredible team. Even with minimal rotation, they continue to be consistent. Even with European football, they continue to be consistent. And you've got to fancy them to win here. The only doubts would be the fact they are playing in European football on the Thursday, and the fact that Man United, they can put on a big performance. And I think the first half against Tottenham, which is a game I worked on a couple of weeks ago, I know they drew the game in the end. I thought they were great. And of course, they'd beaten Liverpool before that as well in a very solid rearguard performance. Maybe that said more about Liverpool than we sort of read into at the time, considering how the ensuing weeks have gone. But I think Casemiro for 60 minutes is so pivotal for this team. The trouble is he's only got 60 minutes in him. And when they take him off, the drop-off for United is so dramatic. And that's not to disrespect 𝗀𝗏𝗏 and Mainoo and whomever comes on too much. But Casemiro, as we know, has been one of the best players in European football for a decade before he's moved to Man United. And so the drop-off is huge. I think not having 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝗀 last week was obviously big as well, because he has given a creative spark. You know, they signed him for like 60 mil, I think. He's a £100 million player. He's excellent, 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝗀, and brings you a chaos that United need in this very rigid Amorim setup. There's not a great deal of room for mavericks in this team. But when you've got one, you can tell. And he has got more out of kind of Mason Mount and Mbeumo and Dorgu around him and Fernandes. So if 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝗀 is back, they have more of a chance in this game. and I'm led to believe he should be back for this game. So he comes in. Ahmad will hopefully come back in as well for United, giving them better balance on the right. So look, it could be United's strongest team. And if there is a hangover from Europe, Palace could potentially lose it. However, on form, I would pick Crystal Palace at 2.5. I think they will follow a similar sort of pattern to what we saw against Wolves, what we saw against Brentford. They will grind, they will grind, they will grind, and then they will score. Mateta anytime at 2.25. I think he's really, really good considering his 6 goals in the Premier League this season and continued consistency of performance. Ismaila Sarr anytime, 3.25. One of the best players in the division across the opening quarter of the campaign. Like that as well. So Palace and one of those two guys to score is very strong for me. Palace 1-0 or 2-0, win to 0, I think is likely. If you're going Man United, the odds are pretty good, and they'll do it by exactly 1 goal. It will be tight either way. Man U exactly 1 goal is 4.5, which I think is really, really generous. So I would shade for Palace, but I don't discount United nicking it.
Well, most of the people are going for Crystal Palace. Actually, 3-0 for Spaghetti. Marco, half-time, full-time, Palace. Spaghetti even going further. Amorim and Slot should be in prison. That's a bit too much.
That's something he knows that we don't know. That's not because of this. That's because of a bank heist they did this weekend. You just don't know.
Well, Crystal Palace to win and over 1.5 goals. Only 𝐿𝐿𝐼 is back in Man United 𝑋2. Good game here in the beautiful borough of Croydon. And now we move to Birmingham.
Lovely place.
I'm not going to say anything about Birmingham, although I could.
Lovely
Aston
place.
Villa. I would disagree. Aston Villa Wolves, Tom.
Yes.
Aston Villa safe bet, 1.5. Our eyes should be there. Put your money in there because actually I think the price is pretty good considering how awful Wolverhampton are this season. 10 defeats already, and we are in November. And the run for Aston Villa now in Champions League spots, even if they started the season having issues, but now it's 6 wins in the last 7, only losing to Liverpool. Cheers to Unai Emery always.
Yeah, great manager, as we know, a man of incredible focus, great plans that he has for games. His team execute them. He's got a lot of soldiers that fully believe in him, and we've seen that lots of times during Emery's career. One of the best managers in football. My only doubt we're going for a Villa win here. My only doubt is the young boys game on Thursday. I expect them to have won that by a couple of goals and made a few changes, but we don't know as we record this, so that's my only doubt. But look, Villa are very, very good, very, very good at the moment, and I'm really pleased with a few elements of Aston Villa. I'm really pleased with Amadou Onana. I know he could be injured for this game, but I think Onana and Kamara in midfield have been great. I think Morgan Rogers, as I said last week, is where the goals are going to come from for Villa if they are going to come. Watkins struggling, but working well with everybody else, continuing to lead the line really well. I mean, what's impressive about Villa is they're doing this with a significantly weakened squad from last season. They lost that Champions League money. They had to cut their cloth accordingly, have returned to a couple of guys that were consistent for them in the Championship. Buendia, McGinn, 𝐿𝐿𝐼, a few other players in the squad that are just sort of like, oh, okay, we still got him, have we? Yeah, fine, bring him in. And it's like, yeah, they've still got it. And they're a very tight, very close-knit, very effective team. And, to come from behind and win at Leeds last week is no easy thing to have done, despite the fact that Leeds are struggling. Very, very impressive. And I think there's a power in this team. I think Tielemans coming back in gives him a quality as he replaced Onana. But if it were me and Onana's fit, I go back to Kamara and Onana. We'll see what Emery does. There might be some rotation, as we mentioned, from Europe in midweek as well. But the form has been fantastic. The wins have been fantastic. The Bournemouth win by 4-0 before the international break was one of the best performances anyone has put in the Premier League this season. And I can see this being quite similar to that. In terms of Wolves, yikes. Loss after loss after loss after loss after loss. At this point, they ain't going to make it. They would need to win 7 or 8 in a row to make it from this point. And I just don't see it. 2 bad goalkeepers, a bunch of bad defenders, a slow, immobile midfield, one striker who doesn't want to be there in Strand Larsen, and a manager in Rob Edwards who should never have taken this job. They will win some games this season. They are going to win 3 or 4 games, and they'll be surprising, and there'll be an element of hope that comes into it from that, and they'll go on a losing run again. Will it be here? Look, I wouldn't totally discount it, considering it's a derby and all of that, but I certainly wouldn't put money on it. Villa win at 1.56, have to go for that. Then I think if Villa score 1, they could go on to score 2, 3, 4, 5 goals here, because the Wolves' defence is so poor. This could be a really good game for Ollie Watkins to get back on the score sheet. 27 goals conceded by Wolves this season is phenomenally bad. So the handicap market is what you're looking at here. 1.5, minus 1.5 Villa is 2.38. It's not amazing, but if you have 1.5 and then add a goal scorer to it, for me, it'd be Morgan Rogers, who anytime goal scorer 3.25. You bundle those two together, suddenly the odds look a bit sexier. 2-0 is 7. I think at least 2-0 in this game. But I think at least handicap minus 1.5, 2-0, Rogers scores, could be 2-0 or 5-0, and nothing in between.
Yeah, put this game in your ACCA. Indeed, Rogers is Bellingham's worst nightmare now. Odds for Wolves to win a game should be 30. By now, it looks like next season we are going to have Coventry back in the Premier League. Well, still a lot of games to be played, and Wolves going down to cities that are nearby, by the way. Next one is Nottingham Forest Brighton. Interesting game. And this one, and really good odds to back any result. Really, Forest now 1 point above relegation. Massive win at Anfield. I was watching the game and I loved actually the way Forest played. I also enjoyed a lot 𝐬𝐭𝐴, how he played that game. So the team is now breathing his 7 points in the last 9 with Sean Dyche on the bench. Still, Forest the underdog for this game, since Brighton are also in a good run, 7 points in the last 9 and very close to Europe.
Yeah, Brighton sneakily being very impressive is certainly going under the radar, as it always tends to with them, inspired by Danny Welbeck weekly. But, I mean, look, let's start with Forest. What Sean Dyche has done is prove what we all knew at the time, that hiring Ange Postecoglou was a bonehead move. Because you were trying to change a certain style. Like, Nuno is a very much a long ball, physicality sort of manager. And to replace him with Ange Postecoglou after a couple of games and try and... Like, Postecoglou didn't say he was going to do something different. He said he was going to do his thing. And it just wasn't going to work in this space of time with this squad. It would take a long time to turn them into whatever Ange Postecoglou wanted. And Sean Dyche has come in and gone, let's do that. We've got all the players we had last season that were so consistently good at executing this particular plan. Let's do the Nuno thing. And I thought it was even interesting that he said after Anfield last week that they decided to go even more long ball. And I found that fascinating. But like, yeah, of course, it's a long ball team. They're a long ball team. They're a physical team. They're as fewer passes as possible to get to the front players. That's Nuno. And that's what Nuno delivered. And that's now what Sean Dyche is doing. So it's no surprise to me he's been able to turn it around by going back to what they were doing before. And of course, he'll add his own spin on it as well, in terms of probably be better from corners as well, which is a Dyche way of doing things. And I think you can't discount that. My only element here in terms of not going for Forest is the European game in midweek. There's not a great deal of rotation here in this Forest team, and maybe they will excel in a way that Newcastle aren't, but you're asking for a lot of hard yards from Anderson and 𝗀𝗏𝗏 to go to Anfield and win on Saturday, win in Europe on the Thursday, and then beat Brighton, who have got a hard-working midfield themselves, on the Sunday. So there's a concern there. And also, you mentioned 𝐜𝐭𝐴𝐧𝐧, fantastic last week, but there's no real replacement for him in this squad. It basically is 𝐜𝐭𝐴𝐧𝐧 or bust in terms of forward. So some elements there that concern me. And just Brighton, I'm just done underestimating them. I think it's my own curse with Brighton, but I keep on underestimating them. We all do, but I'm just blaming me here. And the win against Leeds, impressive. To draw against Crystal Palace, impressive. I know it took that late 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗀 penalty save last week, but to beat Brentford last week in the way they did, impressive. They're doing this without Mitoma and one or two other senior players you'd expect to be in the team. And like Danny Welbeck, 7 goals in the Premier League this season. His goal last week was fantastic. It was such high quality what he delivered last week against Brentford. And I just think they've got every chance of winning this. I think these are two very even teams in lots of ways, two very solid teams in lots of ways, 2 4-2 3-1s. But I think right now, if I pick individual to individual from team to team, I would just shade for Brighton's players over Forest players the way the season has gone so far. So The Brighton win at 2.66, I think, is irresistible. And I think I would take that as my top tip here. I think you look at Danny Welbeck to score, 3.25. He scored 7 goals in the Premier League this season. If someone's going to score in this game, it will be him. I don't discount Forest winning it, but I think it'll be quite tight. Look at the draw. Look at 1-1. Certainly under 3.5 goals. Pick your winner. I would just shade for Brighton, only because every time I bet against them, they win. Every time I get bet for them, they lose. So, yeah, just shade for Brighton because I love Danny Welbeck. There you go.
Well, we were checking the AI of Oddspedia Smart Bet, and they are backing also Brighton, at least to win the first half. There you go. Odds are 3.2 if they only win the first half. And I think the AI is also going for over 2.5 goals in this one, this double chance. That doesn't make any sense. And then over 2.5 goals. Draw also possible. 𝐿𝐭𝐵𝐿𝐴 both teams to score, and over 2.5 goals. Liverpool made Sean Dyche look like a prime Ancelotti. Well, let's talk about Liverpool indeed visiting East London after a tough week, perhaps one of the toughest of their history, especially at Anfield, 1-4 against PSV, 0-3 against Nottingham Forest. Konate and Van Dijk looking like elderly men going to the park. They were just terrible in defense, but the whole team is not working. And of course, people are looking at the bench. In any other club, I think big club in Europe, Arne Slot would be fired. This is Liverpool. Things are different, but I don't know if he has much credit on him, especially if they lose again, Tom, against West Ham, that now they are becoming much more dangerous with Nuno Espírito Santo changing things and making this team much more competitive, even in tough stadiums as Bournemouth.
Yeah, look, I think that's what Nuno has brought. And I think that there was the Brentford and Leeds games were obviously a nadir in the season for West Ham. Nuno got everything wrong and West Ham lost 2 really important games. The Leeds game, if they go down, could prove costly for West Ham, considering they're a better team than Leeds and have better players, but were set up so badly. They were fixing it as the game went on. But he has now got it right, Nuno. And I think that there's a couple of elements to that. Number one is the midfield. Fernandes and Potts is fantastic. It's so good. It is so good. And they went toe-to-toe with Scott and Adams last week and had the better of that first half until Nuno tinkered too much and went too defensive and cost West Ham the game. But Mateus Fernandes and Freddie Potts, fantastic. They have pace, power, tenacity, youth, aggression, and they will compete against anybody in the Premier League. They had no Paqueta last week, which was, I think, a big element because Paqueta, I'm not the biggest of fans, but he protects the ball really well in offensive situations. And so Fernandes, Potts and Paqueta is a really good trio. And seeing that back together again this weekend, I think will benefit West Ham greatly. I think it also means they go back to 4 at the back instead of 3. I think there were points last week where 𝐿𝐿𝐴 and 𝐿𝐴 got in each other's way. Weirdly, 𝗛𝗏𝗏 has been the best of the 3, which is, I've never seen him have a good game before the last 3 weeks. So pleased to see that. 𝐿𝐴𝐼𝐿𝐴's obviously a bit of a disaster zone, so I wonder whether 𝐿𝐿𝐴 starts and 𝐿𝐴𝐼𝐿 gets dropped. But I think West Ham go back to 4 with Fernandes, Paqueta and Potts in midfield. If Summerville is fit, it's Summerville, Wilson, Bowen. And the other element I was going to mention was Callum Wilson. He's already scored more goals for West Ham than Nicholas Füllkrug. He scored more goals this season in the Premier League than, loads of people. Isak, same goals as Salah in the Premier League this season for Callum Wilson. Can't knock that. And the second goal he scored last week, if Salah had scored it or West Ham had won the game, we'd have been talking about that all week. It really was a brilliant, didn't even need to look where the goal was, volley. So, look, West Ham have won their last 2 home games. They are a lot more competitive now than they were under that Wally Graham Potter. And I think they'll give anyone a game at home now, which was not the case for a year under that, again, total idiot Graham Potter. In terms of Liverpool, how much time have we got? You mentioned a couple of elements there. Konate and Van Dijk look like they are gassed, but they've got to play every minute of every game because there's no trust in Joe Gomez and there's no one else there. They can't work out who's going to be right back. Is it Szoboszlai? Is it Jones? Bradley is injured. Frimpong is injured. Not a great deal of cover there, and no one, it seems, can cover it. And because that role is so important, because Salah doesn't do any work going backwards, that guy continues to be exposed if they want to get forward. On the other side, 𝐿𝐭𝐿𝐴 has struggled. In midfield, they haven't got a holder. So Gravenberch and Szoboszlai and McAllister keep getting sort of crowded out. And again, not a great deal of rotation there. They've seemed tired. 𝐿𝐭𝐚𝐲 is not doing it. 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐷𝗿𝗀 is not doing it. 𝗀𝗏𝗏 is out injured. Look, every single player is off form. The setup is not working, and the confidence must be on the floor. So, not great. I do think Liverpool will turn this around. Maybe this week, maybe in the next few weeks. I don't think Arne Slot will be sacked, whatever happens, considering who are they going to bring in. That would be a total panic move from Liverpool, and I don't think they will do it. I do think we're in a conversation now about whether Slot gets next season, as opposed to a conversation about whether he sees out this season. West Ham to win is 4.7. That's worth a punt. It's worth a punt. It's Liverpool's worst run of form, I think, since 1953 across a 12-game period. And West Ham have competed at home. They beat Newcastle at home a couple of weeks ago, beat Burnley at home, and they should have beaten Bournemouth last week. They're a team who are believing in their manager and can win. And at 4.7, it's irresistible. Draw and over 2.5 goals and West Ham, a double chance bet. Draw and over 2.5 goals, 3.75. I thought was a really decent bet as well. So that's a double chance bet, which covers everything except Liverpool win and puts in a pretty decent, respectable amount of goals. 2-1 West Ham is 13, which I thought was really generous too. I kind of feel like West Ham are going to struggle to get over the line. I think both teams will score. Draw, I don't discount it, but I think maybe a 1-1 draw or 2-1 either way. And why not go for West Ham on these odds? That's worth a punt.
Well, Mom Spaghetti, Liverpool fan, saying if Slot is not sacked today, West Ham will win 3-0. So it's very likely that he is not losing his job. Therefore, West Ham to win. First half draw. Tom, can you please say, come on, you hammers?
I'd love to say that. I'll say that after 5 wins in a row. I'm like the guy who will cut his hair. That boy will cut his hair if Man U do it 5 in a row. And if West Ham win 5 in a row, I'll say, come on, you hammers. All right.
And the game of the games on Sunday, Chelsea, Arsenal. Right now, the two best clubs in the UK. Chelsea 6 points away from Arsenal, and both backed by their great European wins. Chelsea against Barcelona, as we know, 𝗛𝗏𝗏 shining, 𝗀𝐿𝐴 stopping Jamal, and Arsenal bringing misery to Bayern Munich for the very first time in the season. No one is thinking about Gabriel, and even the team is still very dangerous at set pieces, as we saw against Bayern. They've been so dominant. I'm talking about Arsenal against Spurs, even against Bayern Munich, that of course they are the favorites going into this game. But Tom, I just hope, well, Arsenal is not winning. Then we have a much more open Premier League. But this is a massive game for the title fight.
Huge game. And I think what's interesting is, can Chelsea cope with the pressure? That's what's going to be interesting here, because we have seen Arsenal over the years crumble under the pressure of being favourites and the expectation of them winning games and then the title. And that's seen them lose the league a couple of times. Chelsea are a young squad. They're a young squad. Most players are under 25, beyond, I think, Reece James and Wesley Fofana and Tosin. Everyone is very young in this squad. And maybe their experience of winning the Club World Cup will get them over the line in games like this. Maybe it won't. And that's what's fascinating here, because if this team were 3 years older, I actually think I'd fancy them to win it. And I'd bet on them quite consistently to win, because the quality here is undeniable. From Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, there's rotation in there with Reece James dropping into midfield if they want to rest Caicedo, as they did against Burnley last week. The front line, if 𝗛𝗏𝗏, who was fantastic against Barcelona, they want to rest him again and bring in Pedro Neto instead. They can do Gittins on the other side. All sorts of options to keep on rotating. And is it going to be Delap and João Pedro, or will it be João Pedro and another in a more solid midfield setup? Loads of great rotation, loads of great potential, but not a great deal of big game pedigree over the years. So that's my only sort of doubt when it comes to Chelsea. Plus, of course, defensively, they still are conceding too many goals. And I still don't think there's a top quality central defensive pairing in the group of players they've got, from Chalobah to Fofana to Achimpong, whomever. Good players. Is there anyone as good as Saliba? Is there anyone as good as Gabriel? Is there anyone as good as Ruben Dias? I don't think there is. And I think that's the core issue with Chelsea right now when it comes to big games. And we kind of saw in the Carabao game in the last Champions League round, they can concede soft goals out of nowhere in games unexpectedly. So I don't know. Jury's still out a little bit. I know it's 3 clean sheets in a row in all comps, but I want to see them win a big game without conceding. Then my confidence grows in Chelsea. But a good team, very good manager. And if they win a game like this, I think conversations about Chelsea winning the Premier League title that's all we're going to be doing next week. If Chelsea can win a game like this. In terms of Arsenal, they've added open play goals to their consistency in recent weeks. And it's funny how, like, maybe the Sunderland game, the draw there, has made everyone realize, actually, we can't just, like, play poorly and play for corners. We've got to do more. We do have to do more to win games, because they weren't doing more and they were winning games. So why would you change it? And I wonder if that game was a bit of a kick up the backside to thrash Tottenham last week in the North London derby, to beat Bayern in the Champions League. Bayern's first loss in any competition anywhere this season is not something to be sniffed at. And I think as well, there's options for Arteta, which there wasn't last season. So, like, 𝐬𝐭𝐴Z ain't really done it. Mourinho has come in. You haven't really noticed. When Kai Havertz comes back, that leaves you 3 players that can all do a similar role up front. If Ødegaard's injured, it ain't a crisis, because Eze can come in. If Rice gets injured, Mourinho can go back. If Gabriel gets injured, 𝗵𝐿𝐴 can come in. Good replacement. If Timber's not doing it, Ben White can come in, etc., etc., etc. So there's rotation, there's options, there's consistency, there's confidence. Oh, a tough game to call this. I would say on experience alone, I would just shade for Arsenal. They have got great experience in recent weeks, months, and years of winning big games. And at 2.29 for an Arsenal win, that's maybe the best odds I've seen this season for just a straight-up Arsenal win. Well worth taking that. I know they conceded 1 against Bayern, 1 against Tottenham, and 2 against Sunderland, but I'm going to stick with it for another week. Arsenal win to 0 at 3.75. This might be the last week I do it, because it sort of stopped happening, but I think scoring against them is still so hard to do. I think if they get 1-0 up, you're in serious trouble. I think it's going to be very tight, this. I wouldn't be surprised to see that things level at half-time, similar to maybe the first half an hour against Tottenham, and Arsenal go on to win it second half. So draw at half, Arsenal win is 5.5. Eze at any time, pick a form player. He's the form player, 3.75. And then I will just throw in this as well. 1-1 is 6.5. I think there's every chance here we're going to be at 1-1 in the 85th minute. And if late chances are missed, that could see through. 2-1 either way, maybe. But look at 1-1. Look at the draw. For me, Arsenal win it 1-0 or 2-0. But yeah, we'll find out together.
Well, our smart bet is going for under 1.5 goals. So only to see or no goals, or 1-0, 3.7. It looks like a tight game. I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if they are right. Draw possible for naming. We have a lot of comments here. I will be cheering for Chelsea, but both teams to score, and over 2.5 goals is a safe bet. Not sure about a safe bet. Arsenal to win and both teams to score. Chelsea should give another 100 million to Brighton for 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜. What a player, indeed. Over 3.5 goals for Marco. It's surprising that most of the people see goals in this game. Arsenal to win and both teams to score. Another one, Marco, Arsenal to win and over 3.5 goals. Well, I'm surprised, actually, to see most of the people going for goals, since these two teams might cancel each other, as we've seen in the other big games for Arsenal this season against Man City or against Liverpool, for instance. Tom, this is it for our Premier League video. Remember, guys, that you have the chance to win some money thanks to our Oddspedia tipster competitions. We have one for the Premier League. I'm just seeing the monthly one in November about to end, but we have another one especially for the Premier League. There you go. EPL tipster competition. A guy from Kenya is leading. Perhaps is our viewer. We don't know. Then another guy from Brazil and another guy from Kenya. In Kenya, they know the Premier League, and then rivals, of course, where you can create your tipster competitions. Tom, let's go with your safe bet.
Yeah, safe bet's been tricky in recent weeks, but I do think this one is a safe one. Leeds going to Man City. Man City win. Safest bet in the Premier League this weekend.
And the ACCA?
3-team ACCA, starting with Man City, who will beat Leeds at home. Then Aston Villa against bottom of the table Wolverhampton Wanderers. Throwing Crystal Palace to beat Manchester United, which I fancy earlier on Sunday. A really generous 4.24.
Okay, this is it, guys, for our Premier League show. Really interesting one. We have midweek games, so we will be back early next week to analyze more Premier League games. Thank you, Tom. Bye.